People are fed music. Day after day, more and more songs are consumed, internalized, and launched into the limelight. The most effective way to describe the change in music over the past 2.5 decades is going from a single dish to an all-you-can-eat buffet. Put simply, there is so much music now that even if all of it was listened to since someone's birth, and assuming that they lived to 100 years old, they couldn't even listen to 0.2% of it. The days of consuming a set selection of music are now over. People are now exposed to so much music that it's become a cesspool thanks to the abundance of manufactured music and labels' hunger to capitalize off of artists and listeners alike. It's also arguable that music is oversaturated and that there is simply too much content. The oversaturation or the growing abundance of similar sounding music that makes it hard for artists to stand out and define themselves of the modern music market, and the rise of predatory capitalism has fostered the creation of a cesspool of synthetic music and has effectively enabled the greed of major labels and streaming services. The roots of how the current music industry functioned wind their way all the way back to the 1970s. After World War II, American businesses experienced booming economic growth. As foreign countries became increasingly competitive and American companies were losing their creative edge, the concept of the seemingly invincible American economy began to crumble under the weight of external foreign pressure. It became obvious that change was imminent and necessary. It became clear to America's executives that the idea of neoliberalism, the evolution of capitalism, and a political philosophy that allowed for unrestricted business ownership was the missing piece of the puzzle. This philosophy bolstered the idea that a system where a plutocratic hierarchy was able to reign supreme would be possible to achieve. As the next evolution of capitalism began to incubate in the decades following the 1970s, countless different industries began to take hits. The music scene in the late 1990s was no exception for the ensuing onslaught of capitalism. The rise of streaming ultimately stemmed from a solution and opportunity to capitalize on the growing age of digitization, as well as significant piracy problems arising in the music industry due to the demand for easier music access in the late 1990s. Tracing back to the pirating era of music, existing from roughly 1999 to 2008, services like LimeWire and Napster would serve as the foundation of the idea to implement services such as Spotify and Apple Music, as they were necessary solutions to the growing problem of music piracy and the popular demand for more music. Music piracy was the practice of gathering large quantities of music online and then uploading it to unauthorized websites to mass distribute it to people. This led to a large revenue loss for artists. A study conducted by economist Stan Leibowitz shows that the decline in album sales from 1999 to 2002 was the largest decline that had occurred over the previous 30 years. These sites were known as peer-to-peer, meaning that every user's computer acted as its own server and could be used to share music between devices. This exponentially increased the potential for how much music could be shared and opened the gates to what was possible in terms of mass music distribution, thanks to digitization. Eventually, legal action had to be taken as this was such a big problem. Lawsuits were filed by the RIAA against Napster on December 6, 1999 because of copyright infringement. It became apparent that there was a need for something that allowed the artists to profit off of their product and for fans to legally enjoy music. Though many are accustomed to having a plethora of music available to them, the ability to promulgate and discover music easily is only a recent development. Before streaming, a music storage culture existed that aimed to solely serve as a storage bin that collected a user's music and to allow them to access it at any time. Though it started as a service that valued the consumer as a sovereign individual and was primarily a music storage platform, it promoted that their service was a cornerstone in making the move from ownership to access. And it slowly started to become a platform that began throwing music and recommendations and suggestions into people's faces that heavily contributes to the problem of oversaturation. With a heavy dependence on venture capital, such as the big three record labels, Sony, Warner, and Universal, Spotify was dependent on the willingness of the labels to renew music licensing deals, taking pride in giving users access to all music in the world for free, being their most defining feature. Spotify was transformed from a primarily music distribution service to one that offered recommendations and vast amounts of personalization to users, which helped it gain a competitive edge over platforms such as Apple Music and Pandora. As users began to become more familiar with the platform in the early 2010s, it started to become stagnant. Users wanted the ability to discover more, and artists wanted to know how their music could be promulgated to a wider audience and allow more individuals to discover more of their music. Spotify and the label saw this as the perfect opportunity to monetize this discrepancy in the system and to start building their music empire. They attempted to do so by capitalizing on over-personalization and the social aspect of the platform, and to eventually add it to the ever-expanding repertoire of social media platforms. Positioning itself as a way to facilitate the sharing and following of music activities among users in real time, Spotify was actively working towards making the platform feel more social. The primary way that they went about doing this was by implementing as advanced an algorithmic system as they could to ensure that it would push songs to users that it thought they would enjoy the most, with Discover Weekly, which was a playlist tailored to a specific user's musical taste that would generate songs for them based on their previous listening habits. Secretly predatory, it was implemented to ensure that it would satisfy artists in that they would have their music pushed out and to also test the waters to start pushing music to begin the capitalistic process. Never before did artists or people more broadly have the opportunity to share their thoughts and emotions to quite literally a global audience. In 2024, songs were streamed 4.8 trillion times. In one day in 2024, more music was consumed than in the entirety of 1989. Oversaturation, or the idea that there's more music available than what people are capable of consuming and internalizing, creates a roadblock on the path to success that blocks artists from being discovered and from standing out. The overabundance of music degrades the quality of the music itself in a multitude of ways. There's so much content that it's hard to fully appreciate what the artist is trying to say in their music. While an album can be released and have a certain impact, just as quickly can another album come along and populate the listener's mind before they have had the chance to fully consume said previous media. The Weeknd, an incredibly influential pop and R&B artist, recently quoted in an interview in response to a question about whether music was dying or not, in which he said, "I don't think music is dying. It's actually being created at a rapid pace. I think timeless music is harder to come by since there's so much to absorb." It's no surprise that those in power want more power. Hence, that's why possibly the sole thing that's keeping the music market blocked from evolving is the idea of the superstar market. The superstar market is the idea that a certain leading percent of people at the top of an industry control the bottom percent altogether. In the music industry, in just the touring space alone, the top 5% of artists earn 6 times as much as the bottom 95% combined. This effect doesn't occur simply due to luck. It's a mix of talent, scalability, and exclusivity that all come together to catapult these individuals to a high pedestal. However, that pedestal is very high. As this is an oligarchical structure within the music industry, it poses a difficult wall imposed by the upper echelon of the music industry that is troublesome to scale or to gain popularity. In fact, the top 0.1% of artists accounted for more than half of all album sales in 2017. Artists like Future, Kendrick Lamar, and The Weeknd are industry titans that simultaneously are responsible for paving the way for any aspiring artist, while at the same time prove to be one of the reasons why the smaller artists have such a hard time achieving the level of fame that they did. Due to the major shift in the industry into streaming services, music sales and the way money was both allocated and paid out massively shift. Sales shifted from being more physical, with an emphasis on selling records, CDs, and cassettes, to the number of streams an artist got, which is directly affected by the engagement a certain album had around it. In fact, streaming distributes more revenue than any other form of music sales in the industry, sitting at 27%, with the next closest being touring at 20%. Spotify pays around 0.003 to 0.005 cents per stream, around 3,000 to 5,000 per million streams to artists. While achieving millions of streams is easy for large artists, it makes it very hard for small artists to make money with this model, further contributing to the superstar market. This creates a large incentive to make the events surrounding an album as enticing as possible in order to attempt to maximize sales and things other than solely streaming. A shift like this created a dual dynamic in which the payout was much less from streaming services, while also at the same time having the ability to catapult artists to a highly successful position that wasn't possible before, simply due to the accessibility that the digital age of music offered. It's essentially a trade-off between luck and the decrease in payment of surefire sales. The only thing that stayed consistent was the money made from touring, which still remains, and for the foreseeable future will remain the primary source of revenue for artists. They make anywhere from 10 to 50 million in touring each year, and most of their tours don't even last the entire year, proving that these artists can keep their millionaire status incredibly easily. Something that's important to consider is how music is consumed as a form of media as of late. A statistic in a study done on online music consumption shows that younger people view music as single songs, whereas adults see them as albums. Rather than viewing songs or music as complete bodies of work, people are tending to view them as single entities. This provides an incentive for labels to push for their artists to make short, viral songs that are designed to capture the attention of the listener. Information from the American Psychological Association even says that since 2004, people's attention spans have gone from 2.5 minutes to 1 minute and 15 seconds. Considering that by listening to these songs, people are actively worsening their attention span, or at least undermining their potential to consume longer form content. Since these songs are designed to be sound bites to achieve quick success, and since trends are showing that people are eager to listen to single songs rather than full albums, people are showing the artists that make these songs that they are consuming their media and leads them to make more and more of it. Because of the shift in the attention spans, the creation of manufactured virality has started to become the norm and has begun to plague the music industry. Though often glamorized within the music industry, not every song reaches chart-topping heights. Since artists take a formulaic approach to music to boost their chances of success, this creates a facet of why music sounds fake or soulless. This formula is then discovered by underground artists and they attempt to replicate it. hence the idea of luck. Even though artists design these songs for major success, they can never and will never be able to fully predict how the song will perform. The right person has to have the right talent. The music has to be released at the right time, during the right trend, and resonate with the right people. The inverse can also be possible. An artist can make a song that they don't intend to go viral, but it does anyway. Luck exists in the industry due to a multitude of factors. However, when luck works, it makes a song go viral. These fabricated songs are what pollute the music industry and create the oversaturation of music. People consume these songs because sonically it pleases them, and the oversaturation, both the attempts and the success by artists, is what depreciates the quality of art, as it feels it's being made for profit. The big three labels can push for artists to make the songs that they want, and this has led to the influx of this generic or soulless music and oversaturation because it has become the standard, as the labels are fully aware that it works and do as much as they can to control the artists signed under them to make the type of music that the labels want. Since these labels have such an iron grip over the artists, and more broadly the industry as a whole, they are a major factor in why the superstar market exists and how it functions currently. Since numbers are so important now, especially visually, as the more popular someone is, it doesn't really matter if they're actually good or not objectively. It's more so based on the chance that they have to get even bigger in the future, which in the label's eyes is better. The labels know that and push for artists to create commercial rather than creative music. The music industry currently exists in a limbo. If nothing changed, it wouldn't be at a great place, but it also wouldn't be at the absolute worst. It can both be true that there's an intersection of viral and fabricated music, while there's also an abundance of quality music. Despite how hopeless the industry may seem at times, quality music still does exist, except it's just now more difficult to find. While these fabricated songs are taking over the charts and are produced to be viral, catchy, and simple, songs produced by underground artists are typically more personal and can speak to a lot of different topics that major artists really can't. In many ways, it's a limitation to be an industry leader. Having such a large fan base means that fans expect a certain standard from an artist, and therefore the stakes are raised. This can certainly affect creativity as it forms an impasse between the label, artists, and fans. And though this does work commercially most of the time, it takes a toll on the artist and can lead to a loop in that the artist must continue to produce songs that don't feel fully true to them. No one can deny that the machine that the modern music industry is will continue to operate and create manufactured songs designed solely for profit. That's a guarantee. However, examining it through a critical lens can help bring to light how it functions today and what can be done in the future to stop the wave of greed cascading over the industry.